Welcome everyone, my name is Robius and today I present to you a new episode of Assassin's Creed The Real History, the series where we compare the representations of characters, factions, events, and locations depicted within one of the Assassin's Creed games to their actual history. Please be warned of major story spoilers ahead. For today's episode, we'll be exploring the history of the politician, aristocrat, philosopher, and writer Donatien Alphonse François de Sade, better known as the Marquis de Sade. To start, we will explore his background during his pre-game history. Then we will cover his appearance in Assassin's Creed Unity during his in-game history, and lastly we will summarize the differences between his representation in the game and his actual life. Starting with the pre-game history. Born in l'Hôtel de Condé, Paris, on June 12, 1740, to Jean-Baptiste François-Joseph, Comte de Sade, and Marie-Éléonore de Maillet de Carman, Donatien was raised in a wealthy environment. Completing his education, he began a military career, using his connections to gain the rank of colonel within a dragoon regiment during the 7 Years' War. Upon his return from war, Donatien wished to marry the daughter of a wealthy magistrate, who instead arranged a marriage between the Marquis and his other older daughter, Renée Pélagie de Montreuil. Together, they eventually had 2 sons and a daughter. Around this point historically, his scandalous lifestyle became more evident. Despite living in Paris, he also spent time at his castle in Lacoste, where he would invite young prostitutes and various individuals over. Donatien was eventually accused of blasphemy for these indiscretions and for having an affair with his wife's sister. While in Paris, multiple prostitutes later reported him as abusive, and following a police investigation, the Marquis was imprisoned for a few short sentences, leading to his exile to his chateau in 1768. Later that year, he was accused of taking a woman named Rose Keller to his estate and imprisoning her so that he could physically and sexually abuse her. She eventually escaped through a second-floor window and reported these events. Not long after, the Marquis was accused of using an aphrodisiac to poison prostitutes and for taking part in sexual relations with his male servant, Latour. In response, a lettre de cachet ordering his arrest and imprisonment outside of the court's jurisdiction was sent by the king. De Sade and his servant were sentenced to death for their actions, and they were eventually captured in 1772. However, they escaped 4 months later. De Sade hid at home with his wife for a few years, but after being accused by more servants of sexual mistreatment, he fled to Italy to avoid legal repercussions. In 1776, he returned and hired more servants. Most soon left due to his behavior, and in one case, a girl's father tried to shoot the Marquis at point-blank range. However, the gun misfired, and instead he left with his daughter. De Sade was later told that his mother was ill in Paris, but when he went to visit her, it was revealed as a ruse, and he was instead arrested and imprisoned in the Château de Vincennes. Here he succeeded in appealing his death sentence in 1778, but remained imprisoned, where he escaped and was recaptured. In the following years in prison, he met the Comte de Mirabeau, who also wrote erotic material. However, the two soon came to hate each other greatly. De Sade remained at Vincennes until 1784 when the prison was closed, at which point he was transferred to the Bastille. It would technically be at this point where the Marquis de Sade was first introduced in Assassin's Creed Unity, as Arnaud was brought to the Bastille. There is a historical record claiming that, on July 2, 1789, de Sade yelled out of his window to the revolutionary crowds that the prisoners were being killed by the guards to incite them further, as was shown in Unity when he did so naked, despite the timeline being distorted.
They're killing us! Oh God, have mercy! They're killing the prisoners in here!
That's enough of that, you degenerate!
On July 4th, he was transferred to an insane asylum in Charenton, and 10 days later the storming of the Bastille took place. In 1790, the Constituent Assembly abolished the use of the lettre de cachet, and therefore de Sade was freed, although his wife divorced him soon after. With his new freedom, he published multiple books anonymously, and dropped his noble title, and instead started to call himself Citizen de Sade, with which he gained political employment. He then met and started living with Marie-Constance Quesnette. Later that year, de Sade was elected to the National Convention, taking a far-left position. It was in this position where he was later met by Arnaud and Elise as the duo searched for information concerning his fellow convention member Louis-Michel Lepelletier, which de Sade was glad to share with his ally. Unfortunately, in 1792, after his son deserted from the army, de Sade disavowed him to save his career. In 1793, he delivered a well-received eulogy at the funeral of Jean-Paul Marat, despite having been against the terror. Soon after, de Sade began to publicly criticize the actions of Robespierre, for which he lost his political position and was imprisoned for moderatism for nearly a year. After the Jacobins fell, de Sade was released in 1794 but had to sell his castle for financial reasons. He lived quietly until 1801, where under the rule of Napoleon he was arrested after it was demanded that the author of Justine and Juliette be arrested for writing some of the sickest and most depraved stories put to paper. In 1803, de Sade was declared insane and was transferred to the asylum of Charenton. His family paid his pension, and Constance was allowed to live with him there. The director of the institute allowed de Sade to arrange some of the plays he wrote for performance. In 1809, however, due to new police orders, de Sade was placed in solitary confinement and he was restricted from using paper or pens. The former Marquis eventually died in 1814. He left instructions in his will that his body remain untouched for 48 hours after his death in the chamber where he died, and that under no circumstances could his corpse be opened. It is also said that following his death, his son burned all of his unpublished works. In summary, there were only a few minor differences between the Marquis' in-game representation and his real history. First, as mentioned, although some historical records claim that he yelled from the Bastille that the prisoners were being killed, those same records explain that this was within 2 weeks of the storming of the Bastille, instead of a few months, as was demonstrated in Unity. Secondly, although some historical documents demonstrate the existence of an underground criminal society in the Cour des Miracles, and others associate it with the title of the Roi des Thunes, there is no record ever connecting the Marquis de Sade with this group. Although, when considering all his time spent with prostitutes, it's possible he may have had some association. However, that's just a theory. Aside from these few minor differences, I was really impressed by his representation in the game, as Ubisoft succeeded in properly demonstrating his beliefs in extreme freedom, unrestrained by morality, religion, or law. In addition, the constant references to sadistic and deviant thoughts and actions really tied the character together, as he had an almost Hannibal Lecter-like feel to him, while referring to his writings and during his parties.
Which is a more incisive commentary on corruption in the bishopric? 7 nuns seducing a parish priest into debauchery, or an enormously endowed Benedictine sodomizing a goat named Pius?
No force in heaven or on earth will make me answer that question.
Quite right, Arno. The goat it is.
With that final fact, we have finished another episode of Assassin's Creed: The Real History. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, I highly recommend you try out one of the Assassin's Creed games. Thank you all for watching. Please leave any suggestions for future characters, groups, events, or locations from any of the Assassin's Creed games that you'd like me to cover in the comment section below. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all in a future historical episode.